Hey there, we are so thankful that you have made the choice to watch one of ACC's messages online. You know, as you are watching and diving into the truths that are being shared, we challenge you. You're sitting at your phone or your computer, hop on social media and be sure to use the hashtag YouBelongAtACC as God is teaching you different things during this message. But you know, we say you belong at ACC and we truly mean that, which means we would love to have you join us during one of our Sunday services at 8:30, 10 a.m. or 11:30 a.m. here at 710 Aquahart Road. So we would love to have you jump into this message, and we're believing God is going to do some awesome things in your life today.
So I'll walk with you in the shadowlands till the shadows disappear. He promised not to leave us, and his promises are true. So in the face of all this chaos, maybe I can dance with you. So let's go dancing in the minefields. Let's go sailing in the storms. Oh, let's go dancing in the minefields and kicking down the doors. Oh, let's go dancing in the minefields and sailing in the storms. Oh, this is harder than we dreamed, that I believe that's what the promise is for. That's what the promise is for.
You guys look happy this morning. I like it. My name is Chris. I get to serve as the youth and young adult pastor here at ACC. I'm excited to be able to share a little bit with you this morning about communication, hopefully. And we're in the middle of this series called Dancing in the Minefields. It's a series that's for married couples, but understand that today's message particularly will apply to all of you. Doesn't matter if you're single, married, never going to get married, whatever. Doesn't matter who you are. Today, I think, is one of the most important parts of any relationship out there. A little background on me. My wife and I got married 8 years ago this year, and which is super fun. We have two awesome kids, a 7-year-old little boy, Aiden, and a 4-year-old little girl, Allie. And so that's fun. Here's the hard part for us, though. We were best friends for the longest time, and then we got married. And that was awkward. And it was awkward not because we're awkward, but it was awkward because we didn't understand marriage. And one thing that Matt said last week that I want to echo is we had to understand what the purpose was. And when we were about a year and a half into our marriage, it finally clicked as to why people should be married. See, the purpose of marriage was never to make you happy. The purpose of marriage was to make you holy. And for us, at least, we missed this part in marriage. We missed the part of the fact that we should be driving one another towards Jesus, not trying to figure out how to make each other happy. And oftentimes in marriages, I think we miss this too. We think marriages are about having great adventures. Or maybe it's not about having great adventures. Maybe it's about finding your soulmate. Or maybe for you it's about having great sex or building a great family. Or maybe for you it's not any of those things. Maybe for you it's the financial benefit of it. Or just because everybody's like, you've been dating so long, you might as well get married, right? But I want to challenge that way of thinking this morning. I want to challenge us to think about what marriage was intended to be. Now, I want to give you guys just a little bit of insight as to what this is this morning. See, this is what normally would be about week 5 in my premarital counseling. And I love premarital counseling. It's fantastic. It's the greatest thing you can do. But this is way at the end. And so I'm going to try to condense what's normally an hour and a half into 35 minutes. So there's going to be a lot of big, generic things that are said. And I would love to sit down if you have more questions and talk to you about it. But understand, up to this point, we've covered a lot more things. So my premarital counseling tends to be more specific than general. But today, for the sake of the big group, we're going to make it more general. Now, the thing that I love about premarital counseling is it exposes things in people's lives. Weaknesses, flaws, baggage they're bringing to the table. But what's great about it is that it exposes things in my wife and I. Every time we've done a premarital counseling session, we walk out going, oh man, we're not good at that either. That stinks. Right? But the cool thing about it is here's what I tell every couple. When a couple comes in and sits across from me, I tell every couple in the room, my goal is to do one of two things. I'm either going to strengthen you and prepare you to be married, or I'm going to break you up. Either way, one of those two things is going to happen before the end of our time together. Not in session 1 maybe, but by the end of session 6, you're either going to be strong or you're going to break up. One of those two things will happen. Because, see, the thing with premarital counseling is it exposes those things in our lives that we try to hide. Now, here's the cool thing. It's by God's grace, in 13 years of ministry, every couple that I've married is still married. And I hope and pray that for however long God sees fit to leave me on this earth, that statistic stays true. Because I think that we need to change the way that we think about marriage. I would love to start a revolution in the church about what marriage is intended to be. Here's what frustrates me. I turn on the TV, and TV dad or TV husband is this buffoon who doesn't know anything about anything, right? Like, what's a screwdriver, Marge? I don't even know. Like, you know what I'm talking about? You turn on a TV, and the dude's just a total Looney Tune. And then we expect, like, we're letting our sons watch this and go, but be a strong man, but watch this show and laugh at this idiot over here. Like, we need to raise up a generation of men who understand what it means to be a man, not immature at 40 years old. We need to, like, invest our time and energy into helping understand and shape and mold what women ought to look like. Not like, go watch this show, this should help. And I'm all for Christian movies, but let's move away from media and move into relationships. Or maybe, like for you and me, the ordinary in marriage has to change. So as Christians, we have to change what's ordinary in marriage. Now, what does that mean? What does that look like? What are you talking about as ordinary? What are you trying to pull out of marriage? I'm talking about that. I'm talking about husbands acting like buffoons. Let's move on from that. But also, like, can we just all kind of mourn the fact that in the church, the statistics are the same as in the world, that over 50% of marriages that start don't finish? Can we raise up a generation that recognizes that when we get married, that God's intention is for us to love Him and love our spouse more than anything else? Can we raise up a generation that recognizes that we need to fight for our relationships, not give up on them? Can we raise up a generation that recognizes, and I hate to even say this out loud, but that recognizes that we need to confess things to our spouse, not cover them up? As Christians, we need to change what's ordinary in marriage. Because here's the thing. 50% or more of couples being divorced leaves a wake in its destruction. But here's the thing. I'm not against divorce. Some people need to be safe. They need to leave a marriage that is unsafe. And if that's you in the room today and you need help, we're here to help you. Like, you need to get out of an unsafe situation. But if your divorce is for convenience, not for caution, that's where I draw the line. I tell couples when they come in for premarital, if you get married, you're about to have a very expensive breakup. So just think about that before you get married. But the wake of destruction I've seen in 13 years of family ministry destroys children's lives, destroys students' lives, and they're left picking up the pieces, trying to figure out what life is supposed to look like. And what's crazy to me is that oftentimes we kind of have this wrong idea of what causes divorce. Like, we might think, like, the number one reason is probably adultery or money. And I would tell you, no, you're wrong. The number one reason that people get divorced is communication. At the root of everything else, communication is the number one reason that marriages fail. Now look, I'm not putting Renee and I up on a pedestal and saying, look at us, we're the picture of perfection. We are the picture of progress. I told Pastor Wright this morning, I hate preaching this message. I hated preparing for this message. Let me tell you why. One stinky thing about my job is that when I begin to teach God's word, oftentimes Satan doesn't like it too much. So guess what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks as I prepared this message? Fighting with my wife. That's all right. We have learned how to communicate better through all this. And you guys get to reap the benefits of what we have been discussing. very cordially over the last few weeks. So, what does it mean to communicate? Well, that's where I want to talk this morning. If you have a Bible, I'd love for you to flip to James chapter 3. James chapter 3. If you don't have a Bible, there's one in front of you, or there'll be one on the screen. I'd love for you, if you don't own a Bible, to take the one in front of you home with you. It's yours to take. It's our gift to you. We just want you to have a Bible. We think it's super important. James is the brother of Jesus, and he writes something I feel like is very important for us to understand about our tongue. Look at what James says in James chapter 3. James 3, James says this: "Dear brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers in the church, for we who teach will be judged more strictly. Indeed, we all make many mistakes. For if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect, and we could also control ourselves in every other way. We can make a large horse go wherever we want it to by means of a small bit in its mouth. And a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot goes or chooses to go, even though the winds are strong. In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches. But a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness, corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself." We're going to talk this morning about communication, like true communication. Not communication like, remember, you're dating in high school. Maybe some of you didn't have phones back in the day when you were dating in high school. But like now, students will get on the phone or FaceTime and be like, "You hang up. I don't want to be the last one to talk. You hang up. Like, I just want to hear you breathe. I just want to listen to you breathe." And like, look, let me just be straight up. Like, if that's you this morning, there's going to come a day when you get married, you're going to be laying face to face with somebody like, "I don't even want to smell you breathe right now." You know what I'm saying? Come on, church. Like, I'm preaching now. Like, that's true. Y'all going to look at you like, "Go that way. I'm good. I don't want to hear you breathe. I don't want to smell you breathe. I don't want you know what I'm talking about. Come on." Like, that's what it becomes when you get married. Hearing you breathe is, in essence, snoring. So here's the deal. There's this stupid phrase made up years ago called "sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me." Y'all know what I'm talking about? How stupid is this phrase? Because here's the deal. Words hurt. Words can hurt. And for you and me, many of us carry the baggage of that into our relationships, into our friendships, and into our marriages. And James says here that the tongue is small. It's the smallest member of the body, and yet it controls everything. How crazy is that? That we can control a horse with a small bit, we can control a big boat with a small rudder, and yet we can't control ourselves with this tiny tongue that we have. There's tremendous power in the tongue. Power to give life or power to bring death. And the power of communication is essential in all relationships. Friendships, doesn't matter what it is. It has the power to do two things, right? It can develop this beautiful, prosperous relationship, or it can destroy the very gift that God's given you. There is one day a year where I hate driving home to my wife. One day every year where I dread getting in the car and going home. Every year, not just here at ACC, but usually everywhere, youth pastors do this one stupid event every year they call a lock-in. If y'all are not familiar with what a lock-in is, it is the worst thing created by Satan ever. A lock-in, and if you don't know what it is, it's basically this. We tell you, bring your students, we're going to lock them in the church from 8 p.m. till 7 a.m., and we're going to entertain them for 11 hours overnight. Why we do this is beyond knowledge and comprehension, but somewhere along the way, a youth pastor came up with this idea, and it caught on. Now everybody does it. But here's the thing with a lock-in. For 11 hours of my night, I am laser focused on making sure nobody dies. Making sure that nobody's making out, making sure that nobody's making babies, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Like covering every dark corner, my eyes are laser focused on safety. And then about 7 a.m., all the kids are gone. I clean up a little bit, and then around 8 or 9, I usually go home. And here's the thing. At 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, I sit down in my car, and it's quiet. There's not a kid going like, "I'm thirsty." There's not a kid saying like, "I don't know where this blood came from," right? not a kid being like, I think I should go to the hospital. None of those things happen at our events. But no, that's not true. It does. But hey, it's fine. It's fine, guys. Trust me with your students. So here's the deal. Like, probably wasn't a good plug. But it's cool. But here's the deal. At that moment, I relax. I begin to kind of, allow myself to become unfocused and attentive, and then I drive. I think this year I'm going to Uber home. Because what happens is I get driving, I'm like, boy, this is nice. It's quiet. I don't have any music on. Just like, oh, y'all know what I'm talking about, right? The jolt, the little driving jolt you get. Like when you're almost asleep, and then like the car's like, oh, yeah, I'm here. What are you talking about? What are you doing, man? Y'all come on. Don't act like you don't, right? Isn't this how oftentimes our relationships go? Think about it. Regardless of how you got with your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, you probably started off hustling. I'm talking about like writing sweet notes, passing them to her, buying flowers, giving her nice gifts, taking her fun places, and then at somewhere along the way, everything just kind of came normal. You got married, you walked down the aisle, and you're like, oh, you give me a beer? You know what I'm talking about? Come on, don't act like it. Don't act like you don't. Like sit on the couch and do that, right? Or can you get me a drink? If you don't, that's fine, whatever. A water or sweet tea, your choice. Doesn't matter. We all become lazy at some point. So the question is, how do we fix that? Well, here's the deal. Here's the big idea. You have to become intentional with your communication. You have to become intentional about your communication with one another. So what does that look like for you and for me? Well, it looks like this. This is one thing I drive into my children. I hate it, is eye contact. They're like, what, Dad? I'm like, no, you're going to look right here. You're going to look in my eyes, because eye contact matters. Eye contact, you get to see the person's soul a little bit. A lot of us have lost this, right? Because we're looking here at our phones, looking up at a TV, we're looking around for somebody else to talk to. It doesn't really matter. But eye contact has become a lost art. You and I need to regain that. It's how we become intentional with our communication. We have eye contact. Or maybe it's just turning off the TV or muting it or pausing it if you have DVR and showing the person, hey, I'm fully engaged with what you're saying right now. I'm in. Right? Or maybe it's, and just hear me out, maybe it's moving your phone to another room for a couple minutes. Like, hey, I want to focus on you, not on Facebook. Let me put this over here for a minute, and let's just talk. Did you guys know the average couple talks 20 minutes a week? No, a week. 20 minutes a week. Students sit on the phone talking to their boyfriend or girlfriend for 6 hours on FaceTime like, I just love you. I love your hair. I love your face. Somehow along the way, we've lost the art of conversing with one another. And I think we need to be more intentional about how we communicate with one another. So what does that look like for you and for me? Pastor Matt introduced these 4 steps, these 4 dance steps last week, and I want to talk through those this morning for just a couple minutes and send you home with some really practical things that you can do this week. So let's take a look. First, I would say the first dance step is to be filled with the Spirit. To be filled with the Spirit. Paul, in the book of Ephesians, writes this beautiful letter, and this is what he says. Check this out. In Ephesians 4:29, it'll be on the screen. It says, don't use foul or abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them. See, Paul gives this directive to only speak things that are going to lift people up. They're going to help people along. You know what I found, at least in Renee and I's marriage, and maybe this isn't you, in Renee and I's marriage, usually the thing that causes the fight is because we say something stupid to one another. You know what I'm talking about? Like, you say this thing like, I don't really like when you do that. Or, I didn't really like that you said that. Right? You become this, and then it just becomes from there, it just kind of blows up into this like shouting match back and forth. We're like, well, I don't like when you do that. Well, I don't like when you, and now we're 10 things deep of everything we don't like, and we've gained no ground on how to actually communicate with one another. All we're doing is telling each other what we don't like. What Paul's saying is, I get it. There are going to be things that have to be worked out, but maybe we can do that in a way that doesn't rip the other person apart. And so for you and for me, we have to recognize something really important. That as men and women in any relationship, you're carrying baggage with you. You're carrying the baggage of a past relationship. You're carrying the baggage of a mom or a dad in the past. You're carrying baggage of something that's been done to you or said to you. And then what happens is you allow that baggage to reveal itself to the other person. Look, here's what I found. People aren't jerks just to be jerks. They're often jerks because they were jerks too. And they never got healed properly. I found that women who tend to be jerks aren't jerks because they want to be jerks. They're jerks because at some point in life, they felt like that's the only way they could survive. Because they were treated in such a way that said that's the only way to live. And they never sought healing. And then what happens is we bring all that into our marriage or into our relationships or into our friendships, and then that baggage seeps itself out. And the problem is when we allow our pain to dominate our marriage or our relationships, we often bring pain to the people that we love the most. And this morning, some of us need to sit with a professional and be healed of some of the pain that you brought to the table to start with. I know counseling is taboo. Like, I don't want to go to counseling because that's what men do. Fantastic. What do men do? Act like idiots and stuff. Like, no. Go to counseling and get healed so that you can love your wife properly. Women, same thing. Don't bucket the opportunity to be healed of a past hurt. Go seek help. Not your girlfriend that you can gossip to. I'm talking about somebody who can actually bring healing in your life. Because if we don't get healed, if we don't allow God to work in our lives, all we're going to ever do is hurt the people who love us the most. Secondly, not only should you be filled with the Spirit, but you should submit to one another. James, in the beginning of his book, says something really, really incredible. Something that I didn't really understand until I got married, but this is what it is. Understand this is what he says in James 1:19. Understand this, my brothers and sisters, you must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. I didn't really understand what this meant. There's this cool phrase, not really, there's this phrase that's going around, right? It's been going around for years. It said, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you'd listen more and talk less, right? I don't adhere to that principle. I like talking. So it's just the course God's given me. But here's the deal. For you and for me, I think what James is getting after is really important for our lives. Let me tell you why. Because what James is saying is not only echoing Paul's only speak things that edify, but he's saying if you want to be even better at communicating, you should listen. You should be quiet and hear what somebody else is saying. So what does that look like? Here's some practical steps. One, you should practice listening to what your spouse is actually saying. If you're not familiar with active listening, this is a key thing in your life that you ought to be doing. Active listening is the idea of repeating back what somebody says. So I'll give you an example. If my wife says, hey, when you watch TV, I feel like you're not listening to me when I'm talking. Me, active listening, would go, so what I'm hearing you say is that you feel neglected when I'm watching TV and you're talking to me. She would say, yes. That active listening allows me to make an action step forward to say, okay, next time I'm going to pause the TV, I'm going to turn it off, I'm going to focus my attention on you. This is active listening. This changes the game. See, active listening allows us to understand not just the words, but the intentions of the words. Oftentimes, like, yeah, I heard you. Yeah, but did you hear me, right? Come on, wives, how many of y'all said that? Like, did you actually understand me? Or are you just saying you heard me? Because here's the deal. If we're just saying, hey, I heard you, and nothing changes, we're not active listening, we're just ignoring. That's not selective hearing, that's just ignorance. Don't be that person. So first, practice understanding what your spouse is actually saying. Second, practice understanding and listening to what your spouse is not saying. This one is a little bit harder. I get it. This is the beautiful idea of learning to read nonverbal cues. Learning to read people's faces, their arm movements, right? If I come home and my wife is like this, right, I'm not going to think, oh, you had a great day? Are we super happy right now? Right? If I come home and I open the door and she's got her hands, her face in her hands, I'm not going to go, oh, okay, so are you crying tears of joy? Are we happy right now? You guys checking with me? Nonverbal cues, 60 to 90% of communication happens non-verbally. We have to begin to learn to read nonverbal cues from the other person. This helps us understand if that person's tone is different than what we're really gathering in our brains. This is why text messaging is the worst. Right? I can text message my wife, oh yeah, I love you, but she wouldn't get my sarcastic tone, right? She needs to be in the room to hear the tone, but also to see my demeanor, how I'm acting. I don't say that to my wife. I do love my wife very much, so just so y'all know. But I've had to learn to practice this. This is a hard one. Learning to read each other's verbal cues often comes from understanding each other's personalities, understanding how you're wired up. Because what could be like a verbal cue would be like, you look mad. Could just be like, no, this is just my face. Y'all know those people. Come on. Right? Like, oh, you're not mad, you just look like me? Okay, cool. Right? A lot of you, like, that's you. It's really hard to read the room when everybody just, stoic. Like, it's weird. But I'm learning to read your verbal cues, Just learned it today. So here's the thing. Not only do we do that, but we practice listening without being defensive. This one's hard. This one's hard because you always want to defend yourself. Like, you come home and your wife's like, oh, like I asked you to take out the trash and you didn't. You're like, oh, well, I asked you to make my lunch and I didn't get that. I'm like, well, this was unhelpful. Like, this conversation didn't go where I needed it to go. It's hard for us to take criticism. I love criticism. It's something in my life that I enjoy people giving me criticism. Not because like I'm a masochist and I like pain, but it's because I like to grow. And I feel like if people can give me true and genuine feedback and criticism, that I can be better at what I do, whether it's teaching or leading or whatever else. Like, I love a good criticism. But here's the thing that my wife knows about me. I'm great with you criticizing me, but I'm going to need you to give me a minute when you're done. You know what I'm talking about? Like, sometimes we think we can bring a criticism and then that person's going to speak back to us in a way that's healthy. It ain't going to happen. Bring criticism and then let them digest it. Let them breathe on it for a minute, right? Go, hey, look. I hate bringing this up, but you didn't take out the trash. Like, is there a way that I can help you remember to do that? And then just go, see ya. Right? Like, just let that happen for a minute. Maybe they need to leave the house. Maybe you guys have an argument, and you just need to walk away for a second. It's all right. My wife knows that I need to walk away every now and again when we have an argument, because if not, what's going to come out next is going to be even worse than whatever it could have been. I said this is true with our staff. It's true with anybody. Anybody that brings me criticism, I need you to bring it and then walk away. And I'll get in touch with you if I care about it. Right? I'm joking. I do. Not only that, but we should reflect the promise of God in His church. This is the third step that Matt talked about last week. You see, the promise of God was that He would come and sacrifice His life on our behalf so that we could have true and genuine life on the other side of it. That He would restore the relationship that was broken. In John 17, Jesus says this to His disciples. To God. He's praying in this moment. This is what He says. He says, I'm praying not only for these disciples, but also for all who will ever believe in me through their message. That means us. I pray that they will all be one, just as you and I are one. As you are in me, Father, and I am in you. And may they be in us so that the world will believe you sent me. See, communication is the foundation on which all relationships are built. No relationship started by you just walking around and being like, nobody, first of all, you don't know who I'm pointing to. I'm not saying anything. This is weird, right? This is awkward. So what does communication look like? Communication looks like you opening your mouth. But in order to reflect what God has intended us to do, we have to do it in such a way that is sacrificial in nature. That we be willing to give up anything to learn about our spouse. That we would do anything to grow closer to them. That we would do anything to recognize that our communication matters. Here's the deal. God saw us as valuable enough to restore a broken relationship. The question is, do you see your spouse the same way? That is us reflecting God's commitment to us. Us reflecting what God has done for us is us viewing other people as valuable enough to restore what is broken. He wanted to restore that relationship with you and I. And you and I need to be willing to do the same thing. The last dance step is to love graciously and sacrificially. This is probably my favorite one. Because in this, maybe I'm going to teach you something new today. Maybe I'm not. It doesn't really matter. Maybe I'm going to remind you of something. But it's something that Renee and I learned, and it changed the game for us. See, loving graciously and sacrificially means loving intentionally, loving on purpose, loving the right way. Let me tell you what that means. Everybody in the room likes to be loved in different ways. For me, I love gifts. You can bring me a gift anytime, and I will love it. I don't care what it is, but if you give it to me, I'm going to like it. So you should give me gifts, because that's what my love language is. That's how I feel loved. So I'm okay with gifts at any point in time. That you want to bring me a gift, I like it. That's fine. That's my love language. If you were to sit in the room and say, hey, Renee, who's better at gift giving, Chris or you? She would say, probably her. But it's not true. I'm the better gift giver. I am. I crush it. I'm thoughtful. My gifts are meaningful. I remember things she said 6 months ago, and I buy them for her. So at a random time, she'll send me something, and I'll buy it online, and then I'll give it to her. Like you said, you wanted it. Like, I love giving gifts. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love it. If you give me a gift, I will never throw it away. I can't do it. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be the worst picture you've ever drawn. And I'd be like, it's going on my board. Because I'm afraid that one day you're going to walk into my office and say, hey, where's that thing I gave you? And I'm going to be like, I don't know. I threw it away. So I told my wife, if you don't want me to be a hoarder, what has to happen is you have to take the gifts you don't like and throw them away. So that way, because I can't do it. I can't throw away bad gifts. I don't care how bad it is. You can hand me this random thing. I'll be like, I don't even know what that is, but I love it. And she'd be like, that's stupid. It's going in the trash. Like, that's her. Now, her love language is quality time. I am not good at this. And if you were to sit in the room and say, Renee, who's better at spending quality time, you or Chris? She would say, me. Not me, her. Let me tell you why. Because she loves it. This is like the weird, like not the weird, it's weird for me. It's great for her, right? This is stuff like the cuddling or like sitting on the couch together, going on nice vacations, things like that. She loves it, eats it up. I'm like, ugh. But I do it. Do you know why I do it? Because I know that's how she feels loved. And I do it not because I have to, but because I want to. Because I want her to know that I love her more than anything else. So, what are the love languages? There are 5 of them that you could learn about. One, of course, is receiving gifts. Just a reiteration of how important that one is. Receiving gifts is great. It's a really good one, just so you know. All right, receiving gifts. Secondly, would be acts of service. Acts of service people enjoy when you come home and you did the dishes. They enjoy when you come home and you swept the floor. They enjoy when you come home and you cut the grass. Sometimes they're little things, sometimes they're big things, doesn't matter. Just any type of service is something that shows them that you love them. These are important. Acts of service are great for that person who loves or who feels loved by acts of service. Third is quality time. I talked about that one. This is not like just sit around and stare into each other's eyes. This is doing things in a quality way with one another, spending time together intentionally. Sometimes that means maybe sacrificing time that you would go do something else to spend time with them instead. Fourth, words of affirmation. Men, this is often you, right? And this is important. I don't say this jokingly. Words of affirmation matter. And let me just be super honest with you. If you don't know how to give words of affirmation, I'm going to teach you a trick this morning. Can I teach you a trick? It's called a good affirmation sandwich. All right? Here's all it is. Hey, honey, you look great today. I wish you would have taken the trash out, but boy, do I love what you do around this house. Thank you so much. You see what happened right there? Did y'all catch what happened? It's called an affirmation sandwich. Affirm, affirm. And here's the thing, words of affirmation people don't tend to catch on to that. They just go, man, she loves me. I need to go take out the trash. All right? I'm helping y'all here. Come on. Y'all need to be writing this down. Words of affirmation are important. They matter. All right? We have to be good at affirming one another. Fifth is physical touch. This isn't like weird physical touch. This is physical touch. People tend to be huggers. You know, when you walk in the room, you're like, come here. Come on. You're like, all right, you're a physical touch person. I get it. That's fine. They often have like their hand on your shoulder or touch your arm. Like whatever it is, like they tend to just kind of, they have to kind of just like, you know what I mean? It's fine. It's cool. Like that's totally all right. That's just how they love. So that means they like having, check this out, their hand held. That's it. Physical touch. They just like to feel safe in that moment. Or an arm around them, or a hand on their back. Just little things allow a physical touch person to know that you love them. Oftentimes, just to be super clear, sex is not part of that. So if you're like, well, we do it all the time, like that's not it for them. That's not how they feel loved. If you're like, I don't know which one I am of these 5, tell me how you feel loved. Because often what happens is when you feel the happiest, that's your love language. So if you're like, oh, well, my wife loves gifts. Okay, well, if you love gifts and you're just projecting that on her, it's probably wrong. So have a conversation. Be like, hey, how do you feel loved? How do you feel loved the most? Is it when I give you something? Is it when we spend time together? Is it when I affirm you? Like, figure it out. Have that conversation. I want to invite the band back out. I want to give you guys 8 takeaways this morning. I know that sounds like a lot, but let me tell you why I'm going to give you 8. I'm going to give you 8 because all of you are in different places. And so all I'm going to ask you to do is commit to one of these things this week. That's it. I wanted to give you 8 different ways that you can connect with your loved one this week. Your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever it is. Like 8 tangible, practical ways for you to love your spouse. So here's number 1. Number 1 is delete the words in your conversation. If he or she, if you loved me, you would blank. Delete it. Quick. Like Microsoft Word, take it out. Replace it with this. And I want to see how this changes the game. I feel loved when you do blank. Let me tell you why this matters. Because this brings your feelings out in the open where your spouse can actually understand them. Like you sitting on the couch and being like, I don't feel loved. Okay. How do you feel loved? Well, I don't like it when you do this. Okay. And I don't like it. Just stop. How do you feel loved? Right? Changes the conversation. Number 2, express expectations you have concerning one another before your feelings get hurt. This is something we cover in one of our weeks of premarital counseling. Like, what are your expectations of one another? Because here's what happens. You often come to marriages with baggage of expectations as well. Like, well, I expect my wife to always cook, my wife to always clean, my wife to keep the house, my wife to homeschool our kids, my wife to do... Like, okay, well, maybe she expects to work full time for you to cook and for you to clean. Like, those are good conversations to have. How can we meet in the middle and say, all right, well, I'll do this and you do that, and we're going to be a team. Right? We had to have these expectations worked out. Why? Because if not, all you're going to do is fight about them. So think about your fights. Are they often about an expectation that you have? Well, I thought you were going to call me tonight. Okay, well, I didn't know that. How was I supposed to know that? Because you didn't tell me. Express those expectations. 3rd, improve spiritual or practical techniques to enhance communication. Do you know what I've found to be super true in my life? The further I am from God, the more distant I am from my wife. Don't catch that. The further I am from God, the more distant I am from my wife. Y'all, we had this conversation, I'm telling you, just these last couple weeks, and that's one of those things. I'm like, look, I've really stunk at leading our family spiritually over these last few. I need to love you well by guiding you spiritually. So maybe that's a habit you need to pick up, a technique. Or maybe it's eye contact. Maybe it's pausing or turning off the TV. Maybe it's saying before we ever turn on the TV, we're going to spend 20 minutes reading the Bible together, praying, talking about our weeks, talking about our days. Can we stop agreeing that we're only going to talk 20 minutes a week and begin a revolution of saying we're going to talk more than we've ever talked before? 4th, learn to protect and cultivate a growing relationship with Jesus and your spouse. See, your love for Jesus is projected onto your love for your wife or your husband. And I just said that, right? The further I am from Jesus, the further I push away my wife. So for you and me, I'm not just saying husbands here, wives, you need to love Jesus too. Because your lack of love for Jesus will cause a split, a chasm as well. 5th, build a habit of clarifying meaning of each conversation. Now, this is important. Active listening, right? How are you going to understand what your wife is talking about or what your husband is talking about if you're not actively listening to what they say? Learn to read their body language. Clarify the important things. 6, this is a fun one. You should do this. All of you should. Write down one thing each day or each night about your spouse that you're grateful for. And then at the end of the month, hand it to them. There's another way. If your spouse is a word of affirmation person, each day, take a Post-it note, stick it on the mirror where they get ready for 30 days. And maybe it'll become a trend, a habit, where you're like, you know what? I love you so much, I'm going to keep writing things. I've got days worth. I've got 365 of these bad boys. I'm just going to stick them up. 7. I'm going to call y'all out on this. I'm so sorry. Not really. Stop discussing your spouse's faults with anybody other than your spouse. Y'all, Meemaw can't help, right? Your best friend Jill can't help. She's not going to fix your spouse. Tell them all the great things about your spouse. Tell them all the reasons you love your spouse. And then tell your spouse all the things they need to work on. That's the only, it ain't going to help you telling everybody else what's wrong with your spouse. It's not going to. Number 8, be intentional about spending time talking together. And maybe you're at a point where you're like, I don't even know what to talk about. Fantastic. Go on Google. Look at just Google conversation starters. Pull them up, be like, I'll tell you one we're doing tonight for our small groups here. For our small groups with our students. If you had $5,000 you need to bless somebody else in the world, what would you do? All right, there you go. There's your conversation starter for lunch. All right, you're like, I don't know. We need to reimagine what conversation looks like in our marriages. We need to desperately seek out that conversation. Why? Because when you were dating, you did. So what happened? We got lazy, right? We became unattentive. We're falling asleep at the wheel. And it's time for us to wake up. I want to share with you guys 2 resources that are really have been game changers in Renee and I's life, and I want to share them with you. One of them is a book called Sacred Marriage by Gary Thomas. It is the greatest book you will ever read on marriage. I haven't read a single book that has even come close to it. I'll read it together. Get 2 copies. There's a workbook, doesn't matter. Take time, do it. I make every couple that gets married, they have to read it. It's the best book you can read on marriage. The second book is The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. If you're like, I don't know what to do, I don't know how to do that well, he's got a website. Check it out. Why? Because we have to become more intentional in our communication, or more and more marriages are going to fall apart. Will you pray with me? Jesus, thank you so much for today. Thank you for the opportunity we have to learn and to grow. I pray that you would move in this place. God, that you would restore the relationships in this room that are broken right now. God, that you would bring a sense of joy and excitement and passion back in the room. God, that you would move in a mighty way here at ACC. That the relationships here would be healthier than ever. God, that you would speak to them in a mighty way. God, if there's anybody in here who's like, man, I need help. Our relationship needs help. God, I pray that they would come, they would seek out a pastor. They would say, we need to sit down, we need to talk, we need to heal. We need to figure this thing out because we're not giving up. We're not quitting. And we're not going to continue on this path either. Jesus, I pray that you would work in a mighty way in this room. In your name we pray. Amen.
Well, we are so thankful for the truth that was shared in this message today. Please know that we as a staff and as a church are praying that what you have learned today, the truths that God has put deep down into your heart, will manifest themselves and grow themselves into something amazing. And as always, you can experience that with other believers, other people who are walking this walk of faith at ACC on a Sunday morning at 8:30, 10 a.m., or 11:30 a.m. As a reminder, please remember, you belong at ACC.